faith. Have faith. Believe in your source. Have faith.
Welcome to Artists, Icons, and Entrepreneurs, the podcast that dives deep into the stories of trailblazers who shape our world. Our co-host, Lulu Benavides, is a seasoned entrepreneur in the beauty industry, is a photographer, artist, and the proud owner of Lulu's The Salon in Galveston, Texas. Our other co-host, Sue Croconis Hansen, is a visionary in the entrepreneurial world with years of experience in business innovation and development. Together, they bring you insights, inspiration, and the journeys of remarkable individuals who have made their mark. And with that, let's get started. Jim Stone's journey in the barbering industry began with a rich family legacy. Both his grandfather and father were barber school owners and inductees of the Barber Hall of Fame. Following in their footsteps, Jim has built an illustrious career marked by leadership, education, innovation in both barbering and cosmetology. A graduate of Bowling Green State University in 1972, Jim attended on a golf scholarship and remains an avid golfer, having won multiple championships including the FSGA Seniors Individual and Partner titles. After completing his university education, Jim obtained his barbering license in 1976 from his father's barber school in Largo, Florida. His commitment to the beauty industry grew as he pursued a cosmetology license in 1978 in Tallahassee, Florida. Jim began teaching barbering at his father's school and in 1982 joined his father as a partner to open the second Sun State Academy in Sarasota, Florida. By 1984, the family expanded their business, opening a third academy in Fort Myers, Florida, where they also introduced cosmetology and nail programs. In 1985, Jim's passion for education led him to become an educator with Zotos International, where he taught across the U.S. and internationally, including in Canada, England, Japan, Taiwan, Korea, Singapore, and Malaysia. He served in this role for 15 years, contributing significantly to the development of the industry. Though Jim sold the Sun State Academies in 2004, his influence in the industry persisted. He has remained an active participant, particularly in the areas of barbering and cosmetology education. He became a founding educator for Evolve Hair Solutions, where he worked alongside with his wife Cheryl to contribute to product development, certification training, and national shows. Throughout his career, Jim's contributions have been featured in numerous major trade publications. In 2021, he was honored with the induction into the Barber Hall of Fame, a testament to his significant impact on the profession. Currently, Jim serves as an evaluator for the National Accrediting Commission of Career Arts and Sciences, visiting barber and cosmetology schools nationwide. He is also the founder of the Barber School Association under the National Barber Boards of America, where he continues to contribute to the growth of the industry through educational classes and organizational development. With over 48 years in the barbering industry, Jim remains deeply committed to his craft, currently working at Bee Ridge Barbershop in Sarasota, Florida.
Welcome, Jim Stone. We're so happy to have you here. And, it's so fabulous to have you here on Artists, Icons, and Entrepreneurs. And you and I and Sue have worked together for over 40 years, if not longer, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, and we've done so much work for different manufacturers, and you have a wonderful, wonderful story. So we want to hear more about you, Jim Stone. It's yourself. Sue?
Well, full disclosure, I've known Jim and his wife before she was his wife, and we've worked together. I do have to say, I have a company called Evolve Hair Solutions, which is a product for women with fine and thinning hair. And it's interesting to me that the first two people that I ever approached about this idea was Jim. We met at P.F. Chang's, and I pulled the base out, and you looked at it, and I flew to Galveston and met with Lulu. And I feel this way. Certainly, Jim, if it hadn't been for you and Cheryl, our certified education program probably would have never gotten put together because of your expertise in education. And you're just so marvelous at it. And so many times along the way, almost 15 years with the company now, you've been a real encouragement to me, because anytime building something, it's not always smooth. And you're such a positive person, such an inspirational person, Jim. And I felt like you were the perfect person to come on this segment, because everybody is talking about education, the schools, what's happening in the industry. You've been a lifelong learner, and I feel like better than most people I know, you really have your finger on the pulse of what's going on. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of that, can you really share with our audience your personal story, where Jim Stone came from and how he came to be the man, the myth, the legend?
Boy, I hope I can live up to all that accolades that I just heard. But yeah, that's interesting. I'm actually from Columbus, Ohio. That's where I grew up, and I actually grew up in the hair business. My grandfather had a barber school in Toledo, and then my dad got into the business, and he had a barber school in Columbus, and then he eventually bought the Toledo school from my grandfather. So anyway, I grew up in the hair business, and I always avoided it. I went to college, graduated, unbelievably, but I did graduate, and I graduated with a journalism degree and public relations, which, I guess is always important in the hair business. But my parents came to my college graduation and said, guess what? We just sold the businesses. We're moving to Florida. And I was like shocked, and I said, okay, I'll go, no problem. Maybe they wanted me to get rid of me. I don't know. But anyway, we all moved to Florida and to the little town of Naples, as Sue knows very well. But back in the 73, 74, 75, Naples was nothing. It was a little resort town without all the millionaires that are there today. But I worked a few dead-end jobs. And in the meantime, my dad bought a barber school in Clearwater. And I met a young man from Ohio that came down because he was one of my dad's graduates. And my dad stuck him on me because we were about the same age. But this young guy that was in his 20s still owned 3 barber salons in Ohio. He was the state distributor for a line of products. And we went to a couple of bars, and I took him to the beach and all that neat stuff. And he's the one that really talked me into getting into the hair business, because at his age of like 27 or 28, he was making over $100,000 a year. And this is back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Wow.
And me and he was a high school dropout, by the way. And I had a 4-year college degree, and I was making about $6,000 a year. So I thought, well, maybe I should think about this hair business. And that's when my dad bought a barber school in Clearwater. So I moved up to Clearwater and went to school, got my barber license. And when I graduated, I got a job in Tallahassee. And I worked in a barber shop for a couple of years, and I went to cosmetology school at night to get my cosmetology license also. And after a few years of teaching or cutting hair, I moved back to Clearwater and taught for a couple of years. And that's when my dad and I decided we wanted to expand and open more schools. And we opened one in Fort Myers, a barber school, and then we added, then I moved to Sarasota to open we did barbering, cosmetology, and nails, and then we added cosmetology to the Fort Myers school also. And we still had the Clearwater school too. So it was an exciting adventure. 47 years later of being in the barber licensed and barbering business, I still cut hair 2 days a week in a barber shop, and I do visits for the National Accrediting Commission to barber and cosmetology schools. And I'm also involved in an organization called NABA, which is the National Association of Barber Boards of America, because they called me and they said, why don't we start a barber school association? And so I took on that task, and we're trying to grow our barber school association now. So there you go. There's my up-to-date, and I still play golf too. So there you go.
And I think that you left out the part, Jim, where you taught cutting and perming classes literally all over the world.
Yes,
from
I
the
got.
state. Yeah.
Well, I got involved with Zotos, as you two ladies well know, and you were involved heavily also, and worked with all of you over the years at Zotos. But yeah, that was just a great experience working for Zotos and getting to travel all over the world. And I spent a month in Taiwan doing classes, and so it's pretty neat thing. And I was Educator of the Year one year with Zotos, and so yeah, that was a great journey of with all the talented people. I think that's how we all became so successful in the hair business was through Zotos and the education that they gave us. So
Yeah.
there again, good
Jim,
adventure.
it was an adventure, and you're such a great educator. But what role do you think that the manufacturers and associations like PBA or even the association that you created are having at this particular time with the younger group or
Yeah,
people coming into the industry?
probably the associations that's doing there's a lot of issues going on with schools. Deregulation, as Lulu knows in Texas, of lowering the hours. There's another proposal. There's a lawsuit that has halted this proposal from the government of making schools follow the state requirement. So if the state requirement is 1,200 hours for cosmetology or barbering, if the school wanted to teach 1,500 hours of cosmetology or barbering, they wouldn't allow. They were canceled out of all of their financial aid. So that's a new proposal that, and you mentioned the organizations, but ACTS, American Association of Cosmetology Schools, has been heavily involved with those lawsuits, and they have lobbyists and they have attorneys to fight those two major problems that are facing schools today. My organization with National Association of Barber Boards, pretty much the same thing. We just had a conference in Oklahoma City, 2-3 weeks ago, and the delegates from the different state boards meet at their conference and talk about the new regulations, and we bring in speakers to try to sway some of these delegates from the different state boards in the right direction to help schools and to help our industry. And it just seems like the government is doing everything to kind of slam our industry a little bit. So, and we had 2 days of education for cosmetology instructors at all of our NABA conferences also. So, we're doing what we can to educate people. And, I think through NABA and through ACTS, they're really trying to fight some of these new deterrents against our industry.
It seems to me, Jim, overall, it's kind of a quandary to me because I look at people like Lulu, who has a phenomenal salon, who herself is a phenomenal educator. And I talk to people like Lulu all the time who just can't get good help, and define good help by serious people who want to make this a profession. And yet I look around and there are a lot of people I know who've made their whole livelihood for 20, 30, 40 years in the business. And I feel like we have a marketing problem. I struggle with why we can't attract young, artistic, who want to excel into our industry. You have any thoughts on what we can do from that end?
Yeah, that is the big problem, and schools face that dilemma of, that was one of our speakers we just had in Oklahoma, was about how to market your schools better to attract more people and to attract better people.
The right
So
people.
that was the exact seminar that she was talking on, and it was the basic theme of the whole thing, or her concept was, it needs to start all the way through school. and you got to get your graduates involved instead of just advertising to get students in the door.
Right.
It's a matter of using your current students and using your graduates to promote the school, get involved with the local salons the best you can, and try to get the salons to come in and inspire the students in the school. And that's another thing that's just students are it's a different breed of students today, so it's a matter of really keeping the students enthused, keeping them coming to school, which is teaching has changed. I mean, the teachers just can't stand there and lecture anymore. They got to get the students involved. They got to play games. They got to have fun. They got to do anything they can to keep the students motivated so they graduate. But you're talking about Lulu's having problems keeping people, and Sarasota just started a speakers bureau, and I went to the first one the other night because they had the top 3 hairstylists in Sarasota as the speakers, and all 3 of them are very well known in the industry, and Lulu probably even knows them because they're all members of
Coiffure, Terry, Coral.
They all have multiple salons in the greater Sarasota area. But it's funny, I actually asked the question, what's the biggest problem that you face today as a salon owners? And 2 things. One of them was the same thing that Lulu was just talking about, is keeping people. Right. Because of the booth rental situation, and the other one was to find good help. So those are the 2 things that all 3 of them discussed as the biggest problems. And at least they're doing what I just mentioned, that they're going into schools and they're presenting things and speaking to the students and trying to get them motivated about our industry, because it is such a great industry.
Yeah, and what I found is that, like yourself, is you talk to different people, and this one person told me that the younger crowd coming into this industry want everything done fast. So it's a different generation. So what we have to do is change our mindset in how we approach that person. It's hard because, we all 3 of us came from a educational background. We knew that we had to practice to get what we wanted, whether it was hairstyling or whatever we were doing at the time, we practiced. These kids now, and speaking with different people, is they don't want to know where you've been. They don't want to know what you've done. All they want is immediate gratification. So our investment in them is to, like one of our guests said, you got to give them small little things and then lure them into the educational part, the hands-on, because that's where they actually learn. But you first have to, be on TikTok or Instagram and do that small little thing and show them a nice, beautiful hairstyle, but lure them into the educational part as far as the hands-on. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard,
Yes.
Especially for those that are successful and has been successful in our industry, is because in so much schools, and and I'm involved with the schools, but and I've changed the way I've approached it. I've changed the way that I talk. I don't talk down on booth rental or suites and stuff. I show them the difference, what they can do when they come out of the school. Well, right now, the cosmetology instructors are telling them that it's best to be your own boss, and you come out and you go into a suite where you don't have that experience. So that's where that's one thing that they fail, because they're told that in the beginning, and then you wonder why the individual doesn't last long in this industry.
Right.
So,
Jim, I believe you're still involved in accrediting salons, correct?
No, schools.
Or that's what I say. I meant schools, accrediting schools.
Right.
Because I went to school, shout out to Capri Cosmetology School in Dubuque, Iowa, 1,000 years ago, well, maybe 50. And we had to have, at that time, 2,300 hours. And when I left, I barely felt competent to be able to roller set, do a haircut, apply color, do a permanent wave. And then I think about after all those hours, and that's back when we had tons of clients on the floor. I mean, as a student, I was doing 18 clients every Thursday and Friday in the beauty school. So it's hard for me to then think about somebody going to school where they have less hours. They're basically learning sanitation, which is important, but that's not going to give them a skill that is going to generate money. You know, Jim is a lifelong learner, as someone I really respect as a craftsman. Like you said, you're still working in a barber shop. You're a craftsman, Jim. And you teach like a craftsman. You have a wonderful presentation and communication skills with your audience. If you're looking at these young people today getting graduated, or maybe even young people who'll be listening who are in a suite wondering why nobody's coming in the door and they're losing money because they have to pay this rent, what type of advice do you give these people?
Well, you know, to me, it's education, education, and education. And, you know, I'm always telling people to go to a good salon that offers education, because it's, you know, especially these states that don't have many hours. I mean, there's just no way they can, you know, learn everything they need to learn to be successful. And so, you know, it's, to me, it's like a 6-month training program after they leave. So they need to go to a salon that has a good training program is my suggestion to the people that are in schools. But go to any hair show and get involved in anything, photography, you know, make a portfolio of your work and just doing things to educate yourself. I guess that's a big thing, you know, and we're talking about barbering, and barbering barbershops don't face all those problems that cosmetology salons do, because usually a barber will stay in that barbershop forever.
Wow.
And because they get a clientele, and you know, there's very few booth rental situations for barbers. So
Wow.
they
I didn't know
basically
that.
stay in the barbershop, and they stay loyal, and they stay in the industry. Do you know that barbering is the second longest occupation that people stay on the job? Of anything? Most people think doctors and all of that, but barbering is number 2. Believe it or not, behind farmers are number 1.
Go Iowa!
So that, you know, barbers do have it easier, and they also generally don't need the extensive training program after getting out of barber school, because a lot of barbers have been cutting hair for years already. And, you know, so they've already had experience usually ahead of time, even before they go to barber school. And then they, you know, go to barber school to get their license, and so they can go work in a shop. So, but
Well, it's-
you know, barbering is a little bit easier. Now, I don't know if Sue's in Florida, but do you know what it is for barbering now in Florida? How many hours? Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
They just lowered it to 600 for
Wow.
barbering, and 900 if they also want to learn chemicals, color, and perms,
900.
and 600 if you just want to cut hair. So, I mean, that's the biggest problem that school owners are facing today, is this deregulation of the lowering of the hours, and still trying to put out a good product, and it's pretty impossible, as you guys know.
I wonder sometimes it's the accreditation. It's the money that gets in the way. Correct, Jim?
Yeah, could be. I mean, there's another problem called gainful employment that the government is really looking at our industry. because it's a debt to earnings ratio is what they're looking at. So the cost to go to school, or the cost for financial aid and the student loans they have to pay back, versus, against what they're going to be making over the next couple of years, their first few years in the business. And that's one of the reasons that the government is really pushing this bad stuff on us.
Well, if the wrong people are recruited in the first place,
Yeah.
and then they're limited as to the education they get in school, it's logical to assume that when they come out, they're either not going to want to or not going to have the skills to make the money to pay back the loans. So
Right.
the system from start to end just got real issues, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So,
And schools are charging a lot of money now to go to school. I mean, most schools are in the $20,000 range. I mean, that's a lot. So, but accredited schools. You're talking about NACAS, the National Association of Career Colleges. They've got, generally speaking, NACAS schools that are accredited do a much better job than schools that are not accredited, because they have standards that they have to live up to and regulations that they have to live up to. So, the small school nowadays that's not accredited is struggling. I mean, it's very difficult. Now,
Right.
the one, we all are familiar with COVID, and that wiped out a lot of schools across the country. But now that I look back at it, and school owners look back at it that are still in the business, they're thinking it was a good thing, because it weeded out a lot of the schools that weren't doing a really good job to start with. And the schools that did make it through COVID, are doing good now. I mean, they face all these problems, like I said, but they still, the enrollment is decent. But the question is, what type of student are they getting in the schools? And that's that's the
real
problem.
that's the beginning.
Yeah.
It was interesting to hear that barbers that they're stayed with the salon or a group of barbering for a longer time than it did in cosmetology or cosmetologists, which is really unusual.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a different breed.
Yeah, different brain.
And barber schools, most, I don't even know the percentage, but I'm going to say that probably most barber schools are not accredited. And a lot of them aren't doing a very good job either, because I visit barber schools and cosmetology schools. But there again, accreditation, I think, really makes a difference. But,
Yeah, and I guess
Just like
getting that
salons,
information
the good
too.
the good salons will survive, and the good schools will survive, and always do well. So,
Well, yeah, I know that in my particular salon, I mean, we have more business than we have stylists, good stylists, and so the ones that are good follow a system and they know the system. And then there's a couple that do not follow the system, and and they're only part-time, and you only have a body there to take care of those clients, even though you wind up having to do redos, or it's just like a vicious circle.
I know something's happening with barbering because two things. One, Lulu and I went to the Orlando show, which I think is one of the better shows in the country. Maybe I'm biased. But I would have to say that if people said, what did you see that was new and interesting? The work being done by the barbers on the floor, let alone in the classrooms, was outstanding, because not only were they doing very, what we would call strong work, they were explaining it and demonstrating it really well. And so that really, really caught my eye. And a couple of years ago, I took a trip to Ireland. And I have to say, hats off to whoever is in Ireland, because every bartender, every service worker, every man had the best haircuts. And the young men, sharp, and they all look like they should have their picture taken and be put in a men's magazine. And I think when you see exciting things happening in the end product, that also helps drive more people to want to do that because it's cool, right? And I think part of what COVID did is there's this complacency that kind of happened of people got used to sitting in their house in their pajamas. There's no real style. You open a magazine, you're not seeing anything that makes you go like, oh, I really want that. You know, people let their hair go gray. So we've got this kind of complacency thing going on at all different levels. The consumer level, the owner level, the stylist level, the school level. And I think the people who care about this business, all different angles, are going to have to come in and try and shake it up a little bit here. Because at the end of the day, what you are saying, Jim, is we can talk about what a wonderful industry it is, but if somebody can't come out of school and make enough money to at least live and pay back their loan, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Something's wrong.
That's exactly right. But yeah, you know, you're talking about the barber at the hair show, but, you know, barbering has become very popular. I mean, you know, 5 years ago, you would see maybe 2 or 3 companies, you know, Wall and Andis there at the show, and that was it. And now they have classroom after classroom of barber demonstrations and companies. But you know, a lot of cosmetology schools have added barber programs to their schools now. So, you know, it has really increased over the last several years and become more popular and kind of a cool thing. And so,
yeah, it's what it is.
No, you talk about trouble getting good people. I mean, we're struggling to get good attendees at our conferences too. And, you know, we're struggling with, you know, why can't we get the instructors from these schools to come to these classes? Because we have marvelous classes at our conferences through the Barber Board and through our Barber School Association that I'm involved with. And it's very hard, and it's hard to get barber schools to join our association, even though we've got, you know, like 10 companies that are industry partners offering these schools good discounts and opportunities and things. And, you know, it's kind of, like you said, lackadaisical kind of a concept now with in our industry.
Yeah, and I think that's across the board, because I know I did some classes for some instructors for it. What was it called? Texas Vocational Association, something like that. And I noticed one of the classes I was doing is that there were some teachers that were really, really wanting to know that information. And there were some other teachers in the corner doing their own hair. And my daughter was there, and she says, "What the hell is going on?" And, you know, you have to lure them to come to the classroom. But it's across the board. It's not only cosmetology students, but also instructors. So you have an instructor that's doing her own hair, and then you have those that really want that information.
Right.
They're there for that class. Right. Then I found out that the school was paying for them to be there. So they would sign, and then they would leave.
Yeah, they get their continuing education hours.
Yeah. So it's across the board, you know.
Yep. Sad.
I keep wondering what the role of manufacturers and, say, organizations like PBA might be. There's going to have to be something that comes in. And I'll go back a different way. When we were all growing up, there were, I think in the United States, there were over 400 distributors. I know Zotos had 250 distributors. Any week that wasn't a holiday, somebody was doing shows somewhere. Maybe one on Sunday and one on Monday. So hairdressers were constantly being presented new things. This is new for the fall. This is new for the spring. This is a new product. This is a new cutting tool. This is, And it was just what we did. When we lost the manufacturers, meaning the big manufacturers that had a large chain of distributors, and we went to beauty stores, we also lost that portion of education. And so to try and think about how does that, it's not going to be the same, but how can associations start to fill in those voids? Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, but the American Association of Cosmetology Schools, they have a CEA education for instructors every year at their conferences. And I know the president because he just moved to Sarasota, so I've been friends with him. But he told me that their CEA membership attendance has really dropped over the last couple of years also. And attendance to their schools or to their national convention has dropped over the last several years.
Right.
So, I question whether maybe some of the online education that's going on today by companies has maybe some effect on people wanting to go to classes, because I know they can get continuing education through My Lady, through online classes. And I think that might have a little bearings on why the attendance is bad for people to physically go to a class, even though we all know that, watching a haircut demonstration or a hands-on workshop or something like that is going to be a heck of a lot more interesting and knowledgeable and education-wise than an online class that they're taking.
Now does their certification online, where it used to take 3 days in a classroom setting in a hotel. But I feel like that's the first step, because we still have people after that who are like, what I'd like to see are people doing rooting. How are they applying color? How are they cutting it short? Whatever. It is there. And like you said, there's only so far you can get. The computer and online education is great to a point. It's like those little crumbs that helps want to create more interest. But then there's a point where you actually have to go get it. And a lot of times, and we know this, you get it from the instructors, but you learn as much from the people standing on the left and the right. How are you holding your scissors? What's the angle? Why are you doing it this way? I notice all the little details are what make this a huge difference in the end,
Yeah,
So,
exactly. I think everybody needs that hands-on.
Yeah.
That really bothers me too when I go in on a school visit, when I see that they don't have any clients hardly at all for the students to work on, which leads them to not having the hands-on knowledge when they graduate, working on mannequins all the time. It's like, oh my gosh. Because, communication and personality is a big part of our industry. So.
Right.
So I guess on our part is constantly educating the person.
Yep.
Yeah, they could do the online, but know that the online is just a temporary way for them to get certified. But for them to know more is to go to a hands-on workshop, because that's where you learn more. And I guess it's all boils down to the way that we approach the whole thing, and not downgrading one method or the other, but saying, we do have online classes. You can do this as convenient in your own home. You can do this whenever you want. But the best thing is we have a hands-on workshop at this place on this time, to kind of direct them in another direction, to go to a hands-on workshop, because that's, we just have to change our particular mindset and how we approach things, I guess.
We had a little discussion at this conference that I was just at recently with the instructors, and they said another problem that instructors are facing today is YouTube. And students watching haircuts on YouTube and thinking that that's the right way to do it. And then they come to school and, they're hearing something different and they're believing YouTube as much as their own instructors. And so one of the conclusions that we came with is to play some of these YouTube videos in theory class and break it down and point out all the little things that they're technically doing not right because, so they learn by watching some of these YouTube videos in class, which I thought was a pretty good solution to some of that problem. And, making them aware that they can't do this, this, and this to pass state board exams on your haircut.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is really good. That's a good thing, is to show them the difference.
Right.
If they're thinking that you can learn so much on YouTube and showing them, that's right. that's the big thing, is showing them that there is a difference. Because I know, when the client comes in and they show me on their phone, they want this beautiful color. Well, they're not going to get in one step, but it falls back to me as an educator or a service provider, is that you have to consult with the client. What does she have on her hair? Can I do that particular service? And what she's showing me, instead of telling her, well, that's filtered, I can't get to that at this particular time. And I do photography. I know you can change the color of hair. I know you can put some curl, you can put makeup on it, So that's what they're doing, is that all these photographs that you see are not the real thing.
Yeah.
But you can't tell that to the consumer, because
Right.
the consumer comes to you as for help. So
Right.
there's a way to talk to that consumer without saying, hey, that's a bunch of malarkey.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll make a point this way. I think in the professional beauty industry today, there's two parts. One is the client comes in for the service. And the truth is, the service involves two parts. It should be both technically sound and artistically pleasing, meaning that when that client comes in, she could be her best possible self. The other thing is for the experience, and that is all the soft skills, the greeting, the consultation, the education of how to take care of the hair at home, how much time it should go before they come back into the salon. And you can't break those three things apart. You have to have the soft people skills, you have to have the technical skills, and you have to have the artistical skills. And unfortunately, I believe that is the key to people who are very successful. They do all three of those steps well. And then the people who fall out are the people who maybe learned pattern haircutting, but they never really pay attention to what it looks like when they're done, or they're very rude to the client and don't make the client feel good about themselves. And I was somewhat struck. We interviewed Stephen Moody, who is now the educational director for John Paul Mitchell Systems. And of course, he was with Sassoon and opened Sassoon schools here in the United States. And he reminded me, that the United States is the only country really in the world that license hairdressers. Most places, they would go into a salon and they would apprentice until they have gone through these various rigid levels, at which point the owner of the salon would then say, yes, I will license you to be good enough to work in my salon or any salon. And I wonder if there's not at least a halfway mark where salons do start working with the schools. Let the schools do the theory, the sanitation, the written stuff, but the rest of the time they are placed in the salons as apprentices, from the very, because we have a problem. The problem might present a great opportunity to improve things, in the same way, where a salon owner might meet a young kid who's at a cosmetic counter or doing something else, and you just see something. How would you like to come to my school as an apprentice? We can get you in a program where you could, yes, you will have to go to school, but you could come apprentice with us. I mean, I see that there's some out of the box kind of things that can happen. Because everybody's saying, look, it's happening, but nobody seems to be saying, what should happen.
There are apprentice bills in a lot of states right now to allow apprenticing, as opposed to even going to school totally. But I like your little idea of a little bit of both. And there are some states that allow that also, because I have visited schools where maybe they allow 250 hours in salon training and the other 750 or whatever, 1,000 hours in the school.
Yeah.
So some states have approved of those type of things, know, and the schools that, or the states that, the schools that I did visited in those states are doing that also. And I think that is a good thing. So they do get that experience of working in the salon. And I think that's something that to help them keep them motivated.
And it's an opportunity for the student also. It's create an opportunity for them.
Right,
which
exactly.
Is good.
Yeah.
Yep. Good.
Yeah. Do you, Jim, have any particular event that you would recommend for a salon owner to attend that's informing them about education? Or I know you've talked about barbering. You're trying to encourage more people to come to those classes. I know this because, Jim, I know you read everything that's going on in every part of the business.
Well, one of our companies that we're working with the Barber School Association, one of our partners is called BeautyCast Network. Are either one of you familiar with BeautyCast
Yeah,
Network? Penny
I
Burns.
listen to the podcast sometimes that Gordon Miller?
Now,
Yeah.
Miller's now with them, and Penny Burns is the one who started the company.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And Penny has spoke at our last two education classes. And we spent time, actually, we had a Zoom call with her last week, the president of NABA and myself and Penny. And because we were talking, she said that, she wanted to help us get better attendance at our conferences, because she was teaching at our conferences and only have 25 or 30 people in the room of great information that she provides is disappointing. So anyway, we decided that we're going to have, and Penny thought that we needed to have a class strictly for owners or managers of schools at our next conference. Because let's get to the meat of it that we're talking about.
Right.
That, we got to educate the owners on things that they need to be doing to keep their instructors motivated, to keep the students motivated. So anyway, that's something that we're going to be doing at our next conference, which is going to be March 2, 3, and 4 in Las Vegas.
Cool.
So that's going to be our next educational event. We call it Lab, Learn About Barbering, but basically it's for all instructors. But we are going to specifically have a class at this conference for owners or managers of schools. So,
is that like a standalone thing, or is that tied into PBA or any? I just wondered, when you said Las Vegas, there's a lot of things going.
We're trying to figure out where, because we thought maybe Las Vegas we could get better attendance, so that's why we chose Las Vegas for our next one. But no, it is strictly standalone with the National Association of Barber Boards conference, and then the first 2 days of the conference is always that Learn About Barbering 2 days of education classes that we provide, and then the delegates come in for their conference. So
interesting. And I guess in closing, Jim, a lot of people have sort of their compass that keeps them on track. Do you have a particular motto or quote or something that sort of anchors you or that you think about on a regular basis?
There's two words that I used to always say when I was teaching: no problem.
No problem. No
And
problem.
when I moved from the Clearwater to open the Sarasota school, they gave me a plaque and they had in parentheses, no problem.
Right. No
But
problem.
I always told students that, they can do it. Not a problem.
Yes. Yes. And that is very much your personality, Jim. Whatever you've ever been asked to do, what challenges came along the way, you always handled it professionally, cool, calm, fabulous demeanor. And in the end, the results were always stellar. You're just a paramount person when it comes to our industry, Jim.
Well, thank you, ladies, and you two are right there with me. So
I know, we want to thank you so much for coming on our podcast, Artists, Icons, and Entrepreneurs, and you're all that.
Yeah.
And we learned so much about the industry, about your industry, barbering and cosmetology, and there is so much that we, as a salon owner and as Sue as a manufacturer, what we need to do in order to keep the ball rolling, you know. And education, like you said, is number one, is just educating and getting involved.
Yep.
And you can do it. You know, we can do it. So
Absolutely.
And Jim, if there's ever anything that's coming up that you're trying to recruit for and you need a shout out, let us know. We always be happy to mention it on our podcast.
Yeah, as soon as we get the education lined up for our conference in Las Vegas, I'll certainly share. And
We'll be happy to give that a little.
little
That'd be
boost.
great.
And also, where can people find you if they want to look for you? Do you have a Facebook or Instagram or?
actually, I am on Facebook, but that is about it. I'm also on Instagram, but I really don't pay attention to it too much. And that's where I've got a young guy that's starting to help me with the Barber School Association because he's very involved in social media, and
There you go.
And we know that social media is a must nowadays.
Yeah,
and,
you have to.
I'm just not with it,
Yeah.
but I am on Facebook a lot.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, that's
thank
good.
you so much
Wow,
for
what an
everything.
episode. That wraps up
job,
another
ladies.
exciting edition
Yep.
of Artists, Icons,
your
and
lovely
Entrepreneurs.
wife,
Thank you
Cheryl,
so
and
much
your
for joining
beautiful
us. We
dog,
hope you're
Lucy,
leaving
a big
inspired
hug
and ready
for
to
me.
chase your
All
dreams.
right, I'll do it.
Don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode over at youtube.com/artist icons entrepreneurs, as well as Facebook at Lulu Benavides, on IG at Lulu Benavides, at Evolve Hair Solutions as well. And don't forget to visit our website at lulubenavides.com and evolvehairsolutions.com to stay updated. Until next time, keep dreaming big, creating boldly, and making your mark on the world. Thanks for listening, and take care, everyone.